Join our family of creators. Your support means the world to us. Subscribe now to the Content Creator channel. Your support keeps us motivated and helps us bring you fresh, exciting content every week. Hit that subscribe button and be part of our journey. I don't think people understand the escalating tensions between the U.S. and Iran in 2025. This relationship stands at a perilous crossroads, characterized by a toxic mix of renewed hostilities and the looming threat of military conflict. The election of Donald Trump, a staunch critic of Iran, for a second term as President of the United States, has exacerbated the situation, raising concerns about his administration's hawkish stance and its potential for miscalculation. The Trump administration's decision to withdraw from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, commonly known as the Iran nuclear deal, in 2018 has been a major turning point in this trajectory towards confrontation. The deal, negotiated by the Obama administration and endorsed by the United Nations Security Council, was designed to curb Iran's nuclear program in exchange for the lifting of sanctions. Its unilateral abandonment by the United States, despite Iran's compliance with its terms, has been widely condemned by the international community. The Trump administration's subsequent maximum pressure campaign, aimed at crippling Iran's economy and forcing it to renegotiate a more favorable deal, has had devastating consequences for the Iranian people. The reimposition of sanctions, including those targeting Iran's oil exports, has plunged the country into a severe economic crisis, fueling inflation, unemployment, and social unrest. Iran, for its part, has responded to this pressure with a combination of defiance and strategic patience. While initially adhering to the terms of the JCPOA, it has gradually reduced its commitments under the deal in response to the U.S. withdrawal and the failure of European powers to provide adequate economic relief from sanctions. I'm sure you've heard the news. The escalating tensions between the United States and Iran pose a significant threat to global security and regional stability. The risk of miscalculation, unintended escalation, or even outright military conflict is real and carries potentially catastrophic consequences for the entire Middle East and beyond. A military confrontation between the United States and Iran would be disastrous on multiple levels. Iran, despite its limitations in conventional military capabilities, possesses a vast arsenal of ballistic missiles and proxies capable of inflicting significant damage on U.S. forces and interests in the region, as well as on its allies, including Israel and Saudi Arabia. Such a conflict would also have severe economic repercussions, disrupting global oil supplies, sending shockwaves through financial markets, and jeopardizing international trade. The humanitarian cost would be immeasurable, with the potential for massive casualties, displacement of populations, and a deepening of the humanitarian crises already plaguing the region. Moreover, a war with Iran would further destabilize an already volatile region, exacerbating existing conflicts, fueling sectarian tensions, and creating a breeding ground for extremism and terrorism. It would also divert attention and resources away from other pressing global challenges, such as climate change, pandemics, and poverty, and I don't think people understand the true complexity of the U.S.-Iran standoff. The U.S.-Iran standoff is further complicated by the involvement of multiple actors with their own interests and agendas. Understanding these players and their motivations is crucial to navigating this complex geopolitical labyrinth and averting a catastrophic confrontation. On the U.S. side, the Trump administration's approach to Iran has been characterized by a combination of hawkish rhetoric, aggressive sanctions, and military posturing. Driven by a desire to dismantle Iran's nuclear program, counter its regional influence, and effect regime change, the administration has pursued a policy of maximum pressure that has so far failed to achieve its stated objectives. Within Iran, the political landscape is marked by a complex interplay of hardline and moderate factions, each vying for influence over the country's direction. The hardliners, led by Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, view the United States as an existential threat and advocate for a confrontational approach, emphasizing self-reliance and resistance against Western pressure. The moderates, represented by President Hassan Rouhani and his allies, have been more open to engagement with the West, and see diplomacy as a means to alleviate the country's economic woes and enhance its international standing. However, the Trump administration's withdrawal from the JCPOA and its relentless pressure campaign have weakened the moderates' position and emboldened the hardliners, who argue that negotiating with the United States is futile. I bet you didn't know how complex the road ahead is for U.S. Iran relations. Section 5. The road ahead. Challenges and opportunities. The path forward in U.S. Iran relations is fraught with challenges but not devoid of opportunities. The Trump administration's maximum pressure campaign has failed to produce the desired outcomes, instead pushing Iran closer to the edge of nuclear escalation and raising the risk of military conflict. The incoming Biden administration faces a critical choice: continue down the path of confrontation and risk a disastrous war, or seize the opportunity to pursue a diplomatic solution that addresses the legitimate security concerns of both sides. Diplomacy, while challenging, remains the only viable option to prevent a catastrophic conflict and chart a more stable and prosperous future for the region. A negotiated settlement would require both sides to demonstrate flexibility, compromise, and a willingness to address each other's core concerns. For the United States, this would entail a return to the JCPOA as a starting point for negotiations, a lifting of sanctions that are crippling the Iranian economy and harming ordinary citizens, and a recognition of Iran's legitimate security interests in the region. Iran, in turn, would need to demonstrate its commitment to upholding its end of the nuclear bargain, refrain from actions that destabilize the region, and engage in good faith negotiations on a range of issues that have long strained relations. I don't think people understand the full impact of the Trump administration's return to maximum pressure. The year 2025 has witnessed a resurgence of the Trump administration's signature foreign policy doctrine: maximum pressure. The stakes are higher, the rhetoric more heated, and the potential consequences far more dire. The administration has doubled down on economic strangulation and military intimidation. Sanctions have devastated the Iranian economy, causing soaring inflation and widespread unemployment. The rial has lost over 70% of its value, pushing millions into poverty. Critics argue these sanctions are ineffective and counterproductive. They have failed to curb Iran's nuclear ambitions or its regional influence. Instead, Tehran has strengthened ties with China and Russia. What's something people don't know about the U.S. strategy to choke Iran's military ambitions? Central to the Trump administration's maximum pressure campaign is the targeting of Iran's military capabilities, particularly its ballistic missile program. The administration views Iran's missiles as a direct threat to U.S. interests and allies in the region, particularly Israel and Saudi Arabia. In recent months, the United States has imposed sanctions on a network of Iranian and Chinese entities accused of providing materials and technology for Iran's missile program. These sanctions, which target companies involved in the production of dual-use goods, such as carbon fiber and specialized metals, are designed to disrupt Iran's supply chains and impede its ability to develop more advanced missiles. The administration has also stepped up its efforts to intercept Iranian arms shipments destined for its proxies in Yemen, Syria, and elsewhere. The U.S. Navy has increased its presence in the Persian Gulf and the Red Sea, conducting regular patrols and boarding suspicious vessels. These actions have led to several high-profile seizures of Iranian weapons, including anti-ship missiles and sophisticated drones. The Trump administration argues that these measures are necessary to counter Iran's malign influence in the region and prevent it from arming its proxies. However, critics argue that these actions risk escalating tensions and could provoke a wider conflict. They also point out that the focus on Iran's missile program ignores the fact that other countries in the region, including Israel and Saudi Arabia, possess far more advanced missile arsenals. You need to hear this if you're a military strategist or geopolitical analyst. Adding to the already volatile mix is the U.S. military buildup on the remote island of Diego Garcia, a strategically located British territory in the Indian Ocean. Diego Garcia, which hosts a major U.S. air and naval base, has long been a crucial hub for American military operations in the Middle East and South Asia. In recent months, the United States has significantly expanded its military presence on the island, deploying additional troops, aircraft, and warships. This buildup, which has been accompanied by increasingly bellicose rhetoric from the Trump administration, has raised concerns in Tehran that the United States is preparing for a possible military strike against Iran. The Trump administration insists that the military buildup on Diego Garcia is purely defensive, and is intended to deter Iran from any aggressive actions. However, the timing of the buildup, coinciding with the reimposition of sanctions and the escalation of tensions, has fueled speculation that the United States is preparing for a worst-case scenario. The potential consequences of a U.S. military strike on Iran are difficult to overstate. Iran has vowed to retaliate swiftly and decisively, targeting U.S. forces and interests in the region, as well as those of its allies. Such a conflict would likely draw in other regional and global powers, leading to a wider conflagration with devastating consequences for the entire world. I bet you didn't know how risky the Trump administration's maximum pressure campaign against Iran really is. The administration is betting that the combination of economic sanctions, military pressure, and diplomatic isolation will force Iran to capitulate to its demands. However, this strategy is based on several flawed assumptions. First, it assumes that the Iranian regime is on the verge of collapse, and that the Iranian people are ready to rise up against their leaders. While the Iranian people are undoubtedly suffering under the weight of sanctions, there is little evidence to suggest that they are on the brink of revolution, or that they blame their own government for their predicament. Second, the administration's strategy assumes that Iran has no other options but to submit to U.S. pressure. However, Iran has a long history of resisting foreign pressure, and is unlikely to back down in the face of what it perceives as existential threats. Moreover, Iran has cultivated close ties with other global powers, such as China and Russia, which are willing to provide it with economic and political support. Finally, the administration's strategy fails to account for the potential for miscalculation and unintended escalation. In a region as volatile as the Middle East, even a minor incident could quickly spiral out of control, leading to a wider conflict that nobody wants. I'm sure you've heard the news. The Trump administration's maximum pressure campaign against Iran has been met with widespread international condemnation. European allies who were parties to the JCPOA have criticized the U.S. withdrawal from the deal and have urged the Trump administration to reconsider its approach. They argue that the sanctions are counterproductive and that they undermine the prospects for a diplomatic solution to the Iranian nuclear issue. China and Russia, both permanent members of the UN Security Council, have also condemned the U.S. sanctions and have vowed to continue doing business with Iran. They argue that the U.S. is acting unilaterally and in violation of international law. China and Russia have also strengthened their military ties with Iran, conducting joint naval exercises in the Persian Gulf and providing Iran with advanced weaponry. The Trump administration's go-it-alone approach has isolated the United States on the world stage and has damaged its credibility as a reliable negotiating partner. The administration's actions have also undermined the international order and have set a dangerous precedent for other countries to disregard international agreements and impose sanctions unilaterally. The escalating tensions between the United States and Iran pose a grave threat to global peace and security. The risk of miscalculation, unintended escalation, or even outright military conflict is real, and carries potentially catastrophic consequences for the entire world. The international community must act urgently to defuse this dangerous situation and to prevent a catastrophic war. Why are there not more people talking about the indirect nuclear negotiations between the U.S. and Iran, mediated by Oman? These talks offer a fragile lifeline amidst escalating tensions. These talks, despite deep mistrust, highlight the high stakes and shared desire to avert war. Indirect talks reflect political sensitivities and provide a face-saving mechanism for both sides. For the Trump administration, direct engagement would undermine its maximum pressure narrative. For Iran, direct talks would be seen as a sign of weakness. The indirect format allows exploration of compromise without political risks. It enables Washington to maintain its tough stance while keeping diplomacy open. Tehran can engage in dialogue without appearing to cave to American pressure. The negotiations are a testament to the high stakes involved. Both sides aim to avoid a catastrophic war. I'm sure you've heard the news. Oman, a small but strategically located country, plays a crucial mediator role between the U.S. and Iran. Oman's history of regional peacemaking leverages its neutral stance and diplomatic skills. Its foreign policy of non-interference and quiet diplomacy maintains good relations with conflicting countries. Oman's unique position stems from long-standing ties with both Washington and Tehran. It maintained relations with Iran post-1979 and mediated the release of American hostages in the 1980s. Oman's relationship with the U.S. dates back to the early 19th century. It hosts U.S. military forces and cooperates on counterterrorism and maritime security. Oman's discreet diplomacy fosters dialogue and bridges divides. Its role as a trusted interlocutor is vital in the high-stakes standoff. Why are there not more people talking about the crucial technical talks between the U.S. and Iran? Indirect nuclear negotiations, facilitated by Oman, have entered a detailed phase with high-level technical experts. These discussions focus on rebuilding trust and identifying potential areas of agreement. The talks center on the JCPOA, the 2015 nuclear deal the Trump administration withdrew from in 2018. Negotiators discuss uranium enrichment levels, compliance with IAEA inspections, and steps to revive the deal. Reports indicate tentative progress on some issues. The IAEA monitors Iran's nuclear facilities and reports compliance with key obligations. This provides reassurance that Iran is not pursuing a nuclear weapon. The technical talks lay the groundwork for possible political negotiations. The focus remains on rebuilding trust and finding common ground. Are you worried about the future of international diplomacy? Despite progress, significant obstacles remain to reviving the JCPOA. Both sides are entrenched on key issues, complicating negotiations. A major sticking point is the sequencing of steps to revive the deal. The Biden administration insists Iran must return to full compliance before lifting sanctions. Iran argues the U.S. violated the deal by withdrawing and reimposing sanctions. Tehran demands the U.S. lift all sanctions before it returns to compliance. This impasse prevents moving beyond technical discussions to substantive negotiations. Both sides accuse each other of negotiating in bad faith. The path to a negotiated settlement remains fraught with political landmines. The stakes are high and the potential for a breakthrough remains uncertain. The negotiations continue amidst deep mistrust and animosity. Am I the only one that didn't know how devastating U.S. sanctions could be for Iran's economy? U.S. sanctions cast a shadow over nuclear negotiations, devastating Iran's economy. The maximum pressure campaign has led to a sharp decline in Iran's oil exports. The Iranian rial has plummeted, causing soaring inflation and eroding purchasing power. Sanctions have led to shortages of essential goods, exacerbating the humanitarian crisis. The healthcare system struggles to cope with the influx of patients. Social unrest has erupted due to economic grievances and frustration with government corruption. The dire economic situation fuels protests and discontent. The impact of sanctions extends beyond the economy, affecting daily life. The specter of war looms as tensions escalate. Everybody is looking for a solution as the nuclear negotiations become a race against time. The Biden administration faces mounting pressure to revive the JCPOA. Prolonged negotiations increase the risk of collapse and potential military conflict. Tough decisions are needed to revive the deal amidst political blowback. The stakes are high for global security and regional stability. Failure to revive the JCPOA would have dire consequences. The world watches, hoping for diplomacy to prevail. The fate of millions hangs in the balance. The time for action is now. I bet you didn't know how Europe is balancing diplomacy, alliance with Washington, and its own interests amid U.S.-Iran tensions. Europe advocates for diplomacy, recognizing the dangers of confrontation. European powers played a pivotal role in negotiating the JCPOA. The deal aimed to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons in exchange for lifting sanctions. The JCPOA also sought to reintegrate Iran into the global economy. The U.S. withdrawal from the deal plunged relations into a deep freeze. European powers have tried to salvage the deal, recognizing its importance. The collapse of the JCPOA would undermine diplomacy and international order. Europe remains committed to finding a diplomatic solution. What's something people don't know about the E3's role in the JCPOA? The E3 alliance, France, Germany, UK, leads efforts to preserve the JCPOA. They engage in intensive diplomacy with Washington and Tehran. The E3 condemns the U.S. decision to reimpose sanctions, arguing it violates the JCPOA. They also criticize Iran for reducing commitments under the deal. Despite challenges, the E3 remains committed to diplomacy. They engage in shuttle diplomacy to find a face-saving formula for compliance. The E3 seeks to provide Iran with economic relief through Instex. Instex facilitates humanitarian trade, bypassing U.S. sanctions. Bureaucratic hurdles and European companies' reluctance limit Instex's impact. The E3 believes diplomacy is the only way to prevent escalation. They continue efforts to bridge divides and find a way forward. The E3's commitment to the JCPOA remains steadfast. What's something people don't know about the snapback mechanism in the JCPOA? The snapback mechanism in the JCPOA allows reimposition of UN sanctions if Iran breaches obligations. It holds Iran accountable and deters violations. The threat of snapback incentivizes Iran to remain within the deal. However, triggering snapback could collapse the JCPOA and escalate tensions. Iran would see it as a betrayal, potentially withdrawing from the deal. This could lead to resumption of nuclear activities and regional escalation. A military confrontation between the U.S. and Iran could ensue. The snapback mechanism is a double-edged sword. It must be used cautiously to avoid unintended consequences. The stakes are high and the potential for conflict remains. Are you worried about how global tensions can impact your daily life? Tensions between the U.S. and Iran have significant economic and political repercussions for Europe. U.S. sanctions force European businesses to choose between Iran and U.S. penalties. Many European companies scale back operations in Iran to avoid U.S. sanctions. This hurts the Iranian economy and impacts European businesses. The sanctions create tensions within the Transatlantic alliance. European powers urge the U.S. to reconsider its sanctions policy. They argue that sanctions hurt the Iranian people more than the government. The Trump administration insists its maximum pressure campaign is working. The economic fallout extends beyond Iran, affecting global markets. Diplomatic tensions strain alliances and complicate negotiations. The impact of sanctions is felt across multiple sectors. The path to a diplomatic solution remains challenging. You need to hear this if you're a follower of global politics. Section 5. A fractured transatlantic front. The escalating tensions between the United States and Iran have exposed deep divisions within the Transatlantic alliance, highlighting the diverging strategic priorities and the growing mistrust between Washington and its European allies. The Trump administration's unilateralist approach to foreign policy, its disdain for multilateral institutions, and its America First rhetoric have alienated European partners, who have long sought to work within a rules-based international order. The JCPOA has become a particularly contentious issue in transatlantic relations. European powers view the deal as a major diplomatic achievement, a testament to the power of multilateralism, and a crucial element in preventing nuclear proliferation. They argue that the deal was working, that Iran was complying with its terms, and that the Trump administration's decision to withdraw from it was a grave mistake. The Trump administration, however, has dismissed the JCPOA as the worst deal ever negotiated, arguing that it was too lenient on Iran, that it failed to address Iran's ballistic missile program or its regional activities, and that it gave Iran a pathway to a nuclear weapon once its key provisions expired. The Trump administration has also accused European powers of being soft on Iran, of prioritizing their economic interests over their security concerns, and of undermining U.S. efforts to pressure Iran. The Trump administration's decision to reimpose sanctions on Iran, including secondary sanctions targeting European companies, has further strained transatlantic relations, leading to accusations of betrayal and hypocrisy. This is gonna blow your mind! Section 1. The Shahid Raja'i Port Disaster, A Nation in Mourning. The catastrophic explosion at Shahid Raja'i Port in April 2025 killed 65 people and injured over 1,000. The disaster has plunged the nation into mourning and exposed deep societal fissures. The port, a vital trade hub, was transformed into a scene of unimaginable carnage. The official explanation of improperly stored chemicals has not quelled public anger. Many Iranians see the disaster as a reflection of government incompetence and corruption. The tragedy has overwhelmed Iran's healthcare system, already strained by economic hardship. Hospitals in Bandar Abbas were quickly overrun with casualties. The cries of grieving families and the search for loved ones have scarred the nation's psyche. The disaster has become a focal point for public anger and frustration. The explosion has revealed the fragility of the social contract between the Iranian people and their rulers. Are you afraid to speak out? Section 2. Whispers of discontent, economic hardship and political repression. Beneath the facade of unity, discontent grows in Iran, fueled by economic hardship, political repression and hopelessness. U.S. sanctions and government mismanagement have devastated the economy, pushing millions into poverty. Hyperinflation and corruption have eroded living standards, while political repression silences dissent. The Iranian government has cracked down on critics, fearing a repeat of past protests. Freedom of speech, assembly and the press have been severely curtailed. Why are there not more people talking about the crushing weight of sanctions on ordinary Iranians? While the Trump administration insists its sanctions target the Iranian government, the reality is different. Ordinary Iranians face economic hardship, shortages and isolation. The sanctions have created a humanitarian crisis, undermining health and well-being. Iran's healthcare system struggles to import essential medicines and equipment. Patients with chronic illnesses face shortages of life-saving drugs. Doctors and nurses struggle to access training and medical advancements. The education system suffers, limiting access to textbooks and research materials. Universities struggle to attract faculty and collaborate internationally. Sanctions deprive students of opportunities, robbing the country of its human capital. Economic hardship and social isolation take a toll on mental health. The struggle to make ends meet and fear of preventable diseases increase mental health problems. Sanctions are a weapon of mass despair, suffocating hopes and aspirations. Why are there not more people talking about the silencing of dissent in the digital age? In the aftermath of the Shahid Raja'i port disaster, the Iranian government has controlled the narrative, stifling dissent and silencing critical voices. Journalists have been muzzled, ordered to follow the official line, and prevented from reporting critically. Iran has invested in cyber capabilities to monitor online activity, censor websites, and block social media. Authorities have tightened their grip on the internet, blocking social media and slowing down internet speeds. The internet blackout has isolated the Iranian people, cutting them off from independent information. I bet you didn't know about the growing chasm between Iran's rulers and its youth. Iran's young, tech-savvy population faces a growing chasm with its aging clerical rulers. Over 60% of Iranians are under 30, born after the Islamic Revolution. They are more connected to the world, exposed to different ideas and cultures. This generation gap reflects a fundamental disconnect in values and aspirations. The future of Iran depends on bridging this divide or facing continued unrest. What's something people don't know about diplomacy on a knife's edge? As 2025 unfolds, the U.S. and Iran are locked in a high-stakes dance, diplomacy teetering on a knife's edge. Long adversaries, they navigate a relationship fraught with tension and the threat of conflict. The world watches, aware that this delicate dance impacts global security and stability. The Biden administration faces the task of repairing damage and addressing security concerns. The path forward is fraught with obstacles where missteps could trigger escalation. Biden signals a return to diplomacy, aiming to revive the nuclear deal. This overture is met with skepticism from both Tehran and regional allies. Iran grapples with internal divisions between hardliners and pragmatists. The Iranian people, weary of hardship, hope for a brighter future. You need to hear this if you're a global citizen concerned about peace. The greatest danger in the U.S.-Iran standoff is miscalculation, leading to a spiral of escalation. Decades of animosity fuel suspicion, complicating diplomacy. Regional actors exploit the rivalry, adding to the tension. The Biden administration faces the challenge of de-escalation. The path to peace is narrow and requires restraint and dialogue. You need to hear this if you're a history buff. The current impasse between the United States and Iran is the culmination of decades of mistrust and missed opportunities. Their relationship, poisoned by interference and betrayal, is trapped in a cycle of confrontation. From the 1953 coup to the 1979 Islamic Revolution and the Iran-Iraq War to the U.S. invasion of Iraq, the history is a litany of grievances and missed opportunities. Breaking this cycle requires acknowledging past mistakes and understanding each other's narratives. It demands a shift in mindset and a willingness to move beyond zero-sum thinking. Recognizing Iran's legitimate security interests and respecting its regional influence is crucial. The Iranian people aspire to peace, security, and prosperity, and their voices must be heard. I don't think people understand the true stakes of the U.S.-Iran tensions. In the face of such daunting challenges and the ever-present risk of catastrophic conflict, the imperative of dialogue, of sustained and meaningful engagement between the United States and Iran has never been greater. Diplomacy, while often painstakingly slow and frustratingly complex, remains the only viable path to resolving the nuclear standoff, to addressing the broader regional security concerns, and to charting a course towards a more stable and prosperous future for the Middle East. Dialogue, however, should not be mistaken for appeasement. Any negotiated settlement must be based on a clear-eyed assessment of each side's interests and concerns, on a willingness to compromise, and on a recognition that lasting peace cannot be imposed but must be built on a foundation of mutual respect and understanding. The international community, particularly the European Union, Russia, and China, has a crucial role to play in facilitating and supporting this dialogue. The JCPOA, despite its flaws and the damage inflicted by the U.S. withdrawal, remains a valuable framework for addressing the nuclear issue and can serve as a starting point for broader negotiations on regional security and other areas of mutual concern. The stakes are too high, the potential consequences of failure too grave, to allow the current impasse to fester. The time for diplomacy, for courage, and for visionary leadership is now. The future of the Middle East, and indeed the world, may depend on it. This is gonna blow your mind. As the year 2025 unfolds, U.S.-Iran relations hang in the balance, poised between confrontation and cooperation. The choices made by leaders will determine whether these nations continue their descent into conflict or find a way to bridge their differences. Confrontation offers little hope for a brighter future. It has only strengthened hardliners and increased the risk of conflict. Cooperation, while challenging, offers hope for a stable future. It requires courage, vision, and breaking with failed policies. The choice is clear. The future hangs in the balance.